statues by British sculptor Gilbert Bayes were once part of a garden of remembrance at Todmorden, 24 miles north of Manchester. They were installed in 1921, but were stolen sometime in the 1990s. These plinths are a reminder of where they once stood. My name is Helen Bayes, and this film tells the story of how, some 20 years later, the stolen statues came to be replaced. In the wake of the First World War, there was a widespread creative impulse that sought to commemorate the conflict and those who had lost their lives in battle. All over Britain, committees were established to raise funds and build memorials, which numbered in the thousands and ranged from simple crosses and obelisks to major sculptural conceptions like this one at London's Hyde Park corner. This new war memorial movement began to provide work for all kinds of artists, including designers, silversmiths, monumental masons, letter cutters, calligraphers, and of course sculptors, one of whom was my great-uncle Gilbert Bayes. In the run-up to the war, Gilbert Bayes had worked on religious memorials in several London churches. And as early as 1916, he was asked to provide 2 large bronze figures mounted on horseback, symbolising war and peace, as part of an impressive frontage for the Art Gallery of New South Wales in Sydney, Australia. The success of these works put Bayes in a good position, and he was able to respond to the opportunities offered by the war memorial movement. His memorial panel in marble at the Law Society in Chancery Lane is an excellent example of his skill when working in low relief. And like the statues stolen at Todmorden, they depict children, which in itself is unusual for a war memorial. Gilbert Bayes would eventually provide work for memorials in Ramsgate, Hythe, Newport, Aldeburgh, Newfoundland in Canada, and Accra in Ghana. As the 1920s got underway, Gilbert Bayes was asked to carve 3 Portland stone statues for a garden of remembrance at Centre Vale Park in Todmorden. The main statue is of St. George, being held aloft, and its location above a fountain may have deterred the thieves. The decision to call on Bayes for this commission was almost certainly influenced by the fact that he had strong family ties with the area. Bayes' parents were born locally, and before relocating to London in 1863, they had worked as artists and teachers in the hillside villages high above Todmorden. The Bayes family tree also includes great Calderdale names like the Sutcliffes, the Fieldens and the Utleys. And at the old Methodist burial ground in Mankinholes, it is just possible to make out the name of Gilbert's grandmother, Hannah. Gilbert's father, Alfred Walter Bayes, was also a well-known artist who sketched and painted in the area in the mid-1800s. Whilst we were filming, we met a local lady who found herself to be the proud owner of an original Alfred Walter Bayes sketch.
Oh, good. Yeah. This is the house here, and the fireplace is still in. And then that was an old boiler that was at the side, and the old lady doing her washing. Yeah, Granny bought the picture, but realised that it was in the house. And then somebody told us that it was the house.
Just down the road is Lumbert's Methodist Church. The church houses 2 memorial tablets by Gilbert Bayes, and in between them is a delightfully painted wooden panel by his sister Jessie. Jessie was the youngest of the Bayes children, a well-respected Art Nouveau painter, illustrator of sacred texts, and a designer of stained-glass windows. I can remember her showing me around Gilbert's London studio in the 1960s, and although he had died in 1953, it was still crammed full of his work. Before she died in 1970, Jessie wrote a biographical sketch called the Bayes Saga, which is a fascinating account of her family, their lives, and the prevailing conditions in the country during her lifetime. We'll never know if the thieves that stole the Gilbert Bayes statues were aware of his ties with the area. But in 2011, the Todmorden Civic Society stepped in and decided the statues needed replacing. The Society's chairman at the time was Paul Clark, and he launched an appeal to raise the estimated £15,000 needed to replace the stolen sculptures. To replicate the originals as closely as possible, Portland stone was again decided upon, and the responsibility for creating the new statues fell to Nick Robeson, a member of the Master Carvers Association.
And it was a big challenge to have one really decent photograph only of each sculpture, taken just after the unveiling in 1921. It was taken on a large format camera, a Hasselblad or something like that, so it meant that the definition on the resolution on the photograph was very, very high, even by modern standards. And that made it much easier for me. We could blow up those photographs and see pinpoint detail. And it wasn't just telling me about the form or how the carving looked, much more than that. It was telling me about the style. There was tool marks there, all sorts of information which is apparently not at first obvious. I then had to use blurred photographs from the 60s and 70s, and those photographs were often not of the pieces. They were of people perhaps doing a memorial ceremony or Remembrance Day or other things going on in the park. And so I had to work out the distance it was taken out, that photograph, the original photograph. I photographed my maquette from the same angle, and it meant that gradually, when I overlaid them on the computer, I could get them so that they were within a couple of millimetres. The other thing that was quite interesting was working out how big the sculptures were in the first place, because there was no record of the height of these things. So a calculation had to be done from a photograph of the plinth, working out the height of the plinth, and then consequently working out the height of the sculpture. As far as the Shield of Honour goes, you've got the two lines representing the River Calder, with the bobbin and the shuttle representing the industry of the town. And then, because it's on the border between Yorkshire and Lancashire, you have the Yorkshire Rose and the Lancashire Rose, and that together forms the crest of Calderdale and Todmorden.
Eventually, after working for over 2.5 years, Nick Robeson's replicas were nearing completion. Up in Todmorden, meanwhile, a huge amount of work had also been going on. The Civic Society under Paul Clark and the Todmorden branch of the Royal British Legion had been busy planning, fundraising, and generating interest among the local press and the townsfolk. Calderdale Council were also involved, and at the Todmorden Information Centre, a local historian, Douglas Wilson, and others, arranged a Bayes family exhibition, and a commemorative booklet was also published. A military parade and rededication ceremony was planned, which would coincide with national events commemorating the Great War. As the plinths were made ready, Nick Robeson and his team were taking steps to prevent any further thefts.
Nowadays we make a lot of planning and contingency and thinking around issues of vandalism and theft. I think with Bayes and the people working with him, it wouldn't have been the forefront of their mind. Consequently, the statues were fixed down with some very, very flimsy fixings, and it wouldn't have been too difficult to lift it straight off. These days, when we do a piece and we fix it down, we're talking about 20mm diameter stainless steel threaded dowels fixed in with resin, which is stronger than the stone.
And with the statues now complete, plans were made to bring them by road, just as the originals would have been 100 years ago. When the big day arrived, so did the people of Todmorden. Along with the band of the Lancashire Fusiliers, the Todmorden Pals, the Todmorden Civic Society, the Royal British Legion, and currently serving men and women from the local area.
I actually remember doing GCSE history at school and actually visiting this war memorial in 1988, and the statues were here, and unfortunately, you know, they got stolen afterwards. And as you come through that central gateway, they'll catch your eye and they'll give the understanding of the war memorial.
I mean, it's only 4 years ago they pinched all them flags in front overnight. All them flags in front, up beside the grass, have been pinched and they've been replaced.
And when the statues went, do you think they went locally or to London or?
No idea. We had a look locally and couldn't find them. I mean, there'd been rumours that they'd got them back. There was all sorts of rumours. So what's happened to them, we'll never know. They might turn up someday. No idea.
I'm Gilbert Bayes' granddaughter. My father, Geoffrey Bayes, was his son. Gilbert died when I was about 2 or 3, and I do have a memory of him in his white coat standing in the basement kitchen, and everybody was a little bit in awe of him. Really, his work was his life. That's what he always ever wanted to do.
Live in Todmorden, where I've always lived and always been aware that I had a family connection with the Bayes family, who were very versatile artists, particularly Gilbert, particularly versatile in the fields he worked in. And we've always been proud of them in Todmorden. And so we are now delighted that Gilbert's statues that were stolen from our wonderful memorial garden, which can never be replaced, are at least being put there in replica form.